This is from you.
18 naked cowboys in the showers at Ram Ranch.
With the bar being set so high by their fantastic debut, Black Midi did kind of feel like a band that, to me anyway, had shot themselves in the foot a little bit. I like Cavalcade, but how are the band going to manage to recreate the surprise, shock and sublimeness of Schlegenheim? Channeling hell, of course. Despite the images that description conjures up, and don't you worry, Black Midi play into that description, Hellfire is an album that makes me genuinely giddy. Sugar Sue is like the composer for the next JoJo's Bizarre Adventure theme had drank a caffeine cocktail that had them jitting around so fast they looked like they were the human embodiment of the Gaussian blur effect. And yet the wild nature of that track pales in comparison to the Cameron Picton narrated Eat Men Eat, which is not only the band's most ambitious song to date, but just one of the most erratic stories in music I've ever heard, and you'll find it in the Stay Hydrated 2022 playlist. Can't believe I have to say this, no spoilers here, but if you're a music fan, checking this song out has to be a top priority of yours. By the time we reach closer 27 questions, this descent down Dante's Inferno is complete. Those accordion bleeps sound like alarms, a futile gesture acknowledged by Jordy Greep as he kicks into a show tuney finale before being enveloped by haywire keys and strums. It's just wonderful. And I've not singled him out yet, and it's not like he's only just got good, but man, Morgan Simpson, he is to this new wave of British post-punk that Matt Tong was to noughties indie rock. So good, so fundamental, the best in his class. He's always been a star, but on Hellfire, he and his drumming really do shine. I can't lie, I'm smitten with this new Black Midi record, which I know is some odd word choice for a hell opera album, but from start to finish it was just so fun, so enthralling, just so exciting. 2022 been a crazy year for rock music. Black Country New Road, Big Thief, Soul Glow, another album that I'll be talking about in this roundup, Fontaines DC and Black Midi. Yeah, we are spoiled rotten, and I do think this may very well be the chaotic cherry on top.
You can go your own way or leave me.
Usually if I have some prior experience with an artist, I'll give the when and the what, and I'm not going to when talking about Redveil. It just would do a huge disservice to Learn to Swim by distracting us with just a very immature scenario in which a 16-year-old Redveil was the most mature, which again still boggles my mind like 2 years later. No, I'd rather just dive right into the album itself, my first bit of music experience with Redveil, which is aptly mature and insightful, especially when consider he's only just turned 18. Jazz heavy rap is pretty common nowadays, but Learn to Swim has enough definition and character with its production that it never got too mundane. Shoulder also highlights a growing strength of his, making some delicious hooks. However, it's Redveil's musings that seem to be the real pull, and man, can he be unrelenting. Just put PG Baby on and you'll hear it for yourself. Redveil's delivery dripping with tenacity as he offers humorous and vicious bars in equal measure. While I do feel like Learn to Swim is a little bit too similar to other hip hop projects, Redveil hasn't really shied away from his influences, though he is starting to come into his own. And on that note, if I were a betting man, I would be putting all my chips on Redveil being up there in the upper echelons with those artists that inspire him, because Learn to Swim is a good album, but it has even better potential for something truly special to happen in the future for Redveil, and I'm just, so excited to see what he ends up doing next.
I'm becoming all alone again. Stay.
I'll be real with you all, as much as I like everything I've heard from Regina Spektor, I've not actually checked out that much. The only full album I've listened to is the fantastic Soviet Kitsch, and I know songs like Two Birds and Hero, the latter thanks to its appearance in 500 Days of Summer, and the former because my fiancée, who submitted this album by the way, claims it is one of her all-time favourite songs. Yet, despite being a bit of a novice, the news of a new Regina Spektor album, her first since 2016, got me excited, which really does speak volume for the little that I have checked out. And yeah, I'm glad that enthusiasm, that excitement wasn't naive or ill-informed, because Home Before and After did manage to meet the high bar that I had set for it. Up the Mountain is a standout. Regina sings with the captivation and timbre of the world's best nursery teacher reading a storybook with her class, every line, breath and bit of pronunciation fine-tuned to keep your attention. That's followed by One Man's Prayer, an incel anthem not seen since the days of Pink Triangle though, thankfully a self-aware one, Regina flexing her storytelling chops in a completely different way. And while the word is overused, Spacetime Fairytale and its prelude What Might Have Been are simply epic, the kind of pairing that would be a rude awakening for anyone that might write Regina off as simply being cute or twee. And yeah, I just use it as a point of reference in the last roundup, but huge La La Land finale vibes from the climax of this. And oh boy, Loveology, the kind of track that, like the aforementioned Hero, hits like a ton of bricks, especially with how Regina sells it, right down to that voice crack around about the 4-minute mark. Sure, the opener would benefit from a bit of a less is more approach, and there is a bit of a lull in the middle with Raindrops and Sugar Man, but those blips didn't do enough to distract me from the good time that I was having with Home Before and After. I've got a lot of Regina Spektor homework to get done, but I think the fact this album has got me both motivated and excited to do so is some strong praise indeed. Unlike most acts of democracy in my lifetime, the Patreon poll for July actually pulled through with one of my favourite albums of today's review roundup. Just Mustard are an Irish post-punk act that I wasn't aware of before checking out their sophomore LP, and God am I kicking myself for it. I can't vouch for whether there's been a huge jump in quality from their debut, but I'm loving what I'm hearing on Heart Under. There's a gothic core to this record that, with the little sprinkles of dream pop, is make it pretty difficult not to bring up any number of Cocteau Twins albums, specifically Garland's. By the time I was just a few tracks in, I had determined that if Heart Under was a person and I saw him on the street, I'd cross the road to avoid them, while still keeping a close eye on him out of just sheer curiosity. It's not a scary album, in fact it can be quite the opposite, Katie Ball's vocals having an allure to them that contrasts well with the doom and gloom that surrounds her. It scratches the same part of my brain that moments on Kero Kero Bonito's Time and Place did, that mesh of lovely soft singing on top of some crushing cacophony. The fact that this noise isn't simply just turning the distortion up to 11 is a plus. There's definition that comes about in some pretty cool ways, like on Seed, which has a synth that reverberates around you in a way that I can only describe it as like if you put a lavalier mic just next to a coin that's just been flipped. It sounds exactly like that, and it is pretty cool. I know it's a bit of a cop-out to say just listen to it, but truly no amount of thesaurus wizardry is going to be able to encapsulate the odd beauty of this Just Mustard album. I'm going to definitely be talking about this come Bliss season, so get your revision done and give this album a listen to ASAP. Well now, the winner for July's Patreon poll is an artist that I'm actually familiar with. Granted, I've never been this huge advocate of Angel Olsen. Much like every critic with a pulse, I like 2016's My Woman, and her appearance on Alex Cameron's Stranger's Kiss is a late 2010s highlight. However, while I can respect the aspiration of it, All Mirrors didn't do much for me, and my interest in Angel Olsen dwindled as a result. We do love to see some growth from yours truly, and Big Time is just so much more up my street. I'm not going to make myself out to be some country connoisseur. My three reference points are Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton and Lurleen Lumpkin in that order, but boy does Olsen's decision to bury deep into this style work ever so well. There's just this glow about Big Time that I find especially appealing, and when it shines the brightest like on the title track and my favourite, All the Flowers, I just find myself utterly charmed. Despite the grief and sadness that this album had been birthed from, there's also a sense of clarity and hard-fought happiness that is just really infectious. It's one thing to sing about how you feel, but it's another talent entirely to make a listener feel that with you, and I find that to be a strength here on Big Time. I'm somebody who's not afraid to say when they're wrong. If making a whole video about the times I was isn't evidence enough, then I don't know what is. And in the case of Angel Olsen, I do feel like I may have written her off a bit hastily. Big Time is a well-written, rewarding album that I would have been a silly boy for missing out on, so I do have to thank my patrons for kind of keeping me in the right. Will I revoke that sincerity when it comes to us hitting this first milestone? Only God knows.
Float away. Float away.
Indie pop records have an awful tendency of putting all their eggs into either the lyrics or a melody basket, but I'm happy to say the grading committee have an even distribution. Sure, neither department is excelling, but I have to give props to the band for touching on what are often trite topics like breakups in a way I found really compelling, like the opening 2 tracks that dig deep into that element of disconnecting from your thoughts, feelings, just your whole self, even if there are lines that don't quite gel with me. Hell, there are even moments like Ada, where both baskets are brimming, the Missouri band on top of their game. Take that into account with sunshiny jams like So It Must Be True that have me preemptively reaching for my antihistamines, and you're onto a sadly overlooked little gem.
So won't you tell me if I'm leaving there? I need to know just where I stand. Oh no.
Is this new Foals record worse than their last effort, which sullied the good name of Midi with 2 in the title? Definitely not. Life Is Yours doesn't overstay its welcome or tread through monotonously, quite like Everything Not Said Will Be Lost Part 2 did. Is that to say this is a return to form? Copy and paste the answer I gave to that last question. It's not as if there aren't any good moments. 2001 comes to mind right away, a track that is unapologetically influenced by Prince. Just add 2 to your song's title and you'll get away with it. It's why no one's ever accused me of ripping off Radiohead. Then there's Wake Me Up, which is a quintessential tune that appears on every Foals record that will get them on that year's FIFA, and yet I will eat it up like the little piggy I am. I just feel like these good moments are A, not common enough, and B, are just too indebted to previous Foals albums. I just find it a bit frustrating because some NME core acts like Wolf Alice have managed to really pull me back in with their recent releases, which in that case was their best album yet. But in the case of Foals, I just feel like with this recent output, I kind of just feel socially distanced from them.
I never want to see this bad. I never meant to run out like that. Sometimes I feel just like my dad.
You know me, I love to praise albums for all sorts of specific achievements. It's what the Hydrated are all about, and these roundups aren't any different. And I've got to give Bartees Strange's sophomore LP some for having one of the best opening runs of the year. Those first 3 tracks are some of the most gripping, emotional blends of emo, math rock and indie pop you or I will hear in 2022. Had I made this video after my initial 2 listens, I would have been of the opinion that it didn't quite hold up for the whole duration, but I would have been wrong-ish. Hennessy and Escape This Circus are both toasty, heartwarming slices. The former a great way to close the album out. I do wish this whole album could have hit the same level as Heavy Heart, Mulholland Drive and Wretched, but it's not like it's far off. I'm happy to say that Farm to Table is a goodie. Also, seeing as it came out after I made that ranked video, if you're a fan of Sad Dad, Rock Act The National, then check out Say Goodbye to Pretty Boy, which is a very early Bartees Strange EP that has him doing some fun reimaginings of some of the National's like most iconic tracks. Lemon World especially goes off. It's just full of all the characteristics that have converted me into a fan of his.
I want love. I want love.
To some, he might just be that guy Bon Iver chucked on a track that one time, but it's hard to state just how big a deal Paolo Nutini is in Scotland. The kind of artist who, with only 3 albums under his belt prior to this new one, could have retired and been considered an icon, maybe coming back every couple of years to tour. So the fact that we were getting a Paolo Nutini record 9 years after what I believe is his best album to date was enough to grab people's attention, a lot of people's attention, including my own. But once that initial excitement wore off, there was just this kind of looming dread that started to sink in that was going, well, he's been away for a while, like, what if it's not any good? The scope and ambition that Nutini embedded into his slice of life folk pop on Caustic Noise still remains. Last night in the Bittersweet, leaving the window open to let in various drafts of freshness, soul, folk, rock, hell, even krautrock is on the menu, and while I wouldn't say they're all styles Nutini does impressively, it made the 72-minute runtime far less of a slog than I anticipated. In terms of highlights, more than a few materialise. Radio stood out to me right away, Paolo screaming for sincerity in a disingenuous world, both metaphorically and literally when it comes to that Springsteen-y climax, that throws in some tasty, tasty horns. Through the Echoes is a great wee folksy number 2, and Acid Eyes is a longing, regretful tune that hits all the right emotional beats. I do think this album could have done with some editing, as I don't feel like every track earns its keep, especially near the latter half of the record, with songs like Children of the Stars feeling a little placeholdery or in need of being workshopped. With a more precise aim, I think this could have been a more fruitful album. Maybe that just comes down to Nutini having a backlog of tunes that he just didn't want to sit on any longer, he just wanted to get them out there. It kind of does hold this album back a little bit for me, but when Last Night in the Bittersweet is good, it's just some of Nutini's strongest work ever. So that's pretty much it. A bit of a mixed bag, but worthwhile. Just don't leave us waiting so long for the next one, okay?
My best, I guess, no excuses and no regrets. Keep no record of the wrong or the money I spent.
Now this is interesting. If you watched my best tracks of 2021 video, then you'll already know that I'm familiar with Camp Trash, but what I didn't know was that their guitarist Keegan is actually a fellow music reviewer. 9 out of 10 people can't tell the difference between these two photos. And I bring this up because for no real reason, I just thought it was neat. You know what else is neat? This new Camp Trash album. With a full-length record, these Florida boys get more room to play and fool around with. Sometimes that's wee ways, like Pursuit, which has this goofy little lyrical touch with the long break in between brings you back to what you and miss, or that flourish on Let It Ride. Just divine. And it's evident in big ways with that muscly climax on Enough Explaining that made a solid impression on me. Sure, it's not going to redefine what an emo album is, but is that really fair? For a debut album, what an act should be prioritising is showcasing like their quirks and the kind of enticing elements of what they do, and also kind of lay out the foundations for future releases that will have them hopefully going above and beyond. And this bedrock that does that, I'm sorry to say it, but this bedrock rocks and has me happy to be on board what seems to be a pretty promising journey for Camp Trash.
I've been so down and under pressure. I'm way too fine to be this stressed, yeah.
I really want to ensure I'm not coming across as harsh when discussing this new Lizzo album, and let me stress that that's not because it's offensively bad, far from it. I like About Damn Time, which deserves all the praise it's getting, a mighty disco throwback with all the oomph, charm and sass that made Boys and Juice such immediate bops, and Design is a fun, pacey opener that marks Lizzo's return, and if you had forgotten her during her time away, then this box ticking exercise of all her quirks, make sure you won't do that again. It's just that I can't help but have this strong feeling, one that's just like kind of hard to shake off, that Special is just a little bit on autopilot. Don't get me wrong, Lizzo herself is far from slacking. Even on songs that feel a bit on, like I Love You Bitch, she's given it 110%. The extent to which Lizzo is trying is ridiculous and it cannot be denied. I guess this sentiment comes more about the feel of the album. There's love ballads, party tunes, clapback tracks. None of it's offensively bad or even close to it. It's just so predictable, so bread and buttery for Lizzo that I just feel a bit numb to it. It just feels too safe, and it's a shame because I just know a more ambitious killer affair isn't outside the realm of possibility for Lizzo. Put it this way, Special is a well produced album. It definitely has some goodies on it, and if you loved Lizzo's last album, then you're going to be all over this. Please don't let what I've said put you off it, because you'll like it. You will like it. However, if, like myself, you were hoping for something a bit different, a bit more of a curveball, something just a bit more spicy, maybe just look elsewhere.
It's about damn time.
And that brings an end to another review roundup. Filmed during a heat wave that not only did it cause my camera to stop recording, meaning this is the second time that I've filmed all the scenes you've seen just now. If I think about it too much, it starts getting a panic attack. So what were my favourite albums that I covered today? Definitely New Black Midi and Just Mustard. Again, rock music this year, going off, such fun time. But let me know what you make of all the albums that I've talked about today, my thoughts on them, down in the comments below. And if you want to have a hand in the next review roundup, if there's an album you want me to cover, then why not join the Patreon, where you can suggest, submit and vote on the record that I'll get to cover in the next one. Next video I do, promise it's not going to be a review roundup, it's actually going to be the next entry in the ranked series. If you know, you know what it's going to end up being. But yeah, I'll catch you all in August for that one. But until then, as always folks, and especially during this heat, stay safe and stay hydrated.